Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying that also, because like that, I feel like that really ties in so well with like what we're trying to, convey with the theme here is that like, planning is a big part of it, sure, but it doesn't matter how much you plan if you're not affording yourself the opportunity to, if there's space to potentially either scale back or delegate, finding the opportunity to do so. Or even just bringing in collaborators, anything to kind of make sure that the amount of work you're taking on is something that you can, juggle and remain as healthy as possible.
Also, something indies are very bad at, notoriously bad at, knowing what their potential workload is, and I'm not omitting myself from that.
Absolutely. And I think like we almost, and I'm sure like there is kind of a AAA culture component of this, but there's like this borderline glorification of like, working yourself half to death. And it's like, well, if you want to think about that from a purely transactional angle, that doesn't necessarily produce the best work or the best reflection of yourself. And then also, if you want to think about it from the human side, which I would highly recommend if possible, that tires you out. It really messes with you. So I love to see obviously more of the, it seems like, especially on the indie side, there's more of this kind of starting to be more vocal about like knowing limits and balancing them. And hopefully, as time goes on, everybody's able to kind of better calibrate that.
Yeah, totally. There's this kind of like, what do you call it? Like bad reputation to the whole design by committee thing, but that's not really what collaboration means. It's like design by committee is like too many people fighting over the same thing. Collaboration is everyone doing what they're best at, and then also people helping them do that. Those are different. Yeah. And also everyone kind of double checking everyone else's work. Like if I'm the only one doing everything, and this happened a lot in Ikenfelll, where I would put something in the game, and then everyone else on the team would be like, "Why is this here? Remove this. This is so bad." And I'd be like, "Okay, please tell me what to replace it with. Like, just please make a spreadsheet, and I'll replace everything." Like, man, I'm so tired. And so it's like, cool, I could do a whole thing in Vision on my own, but that doesn't make better work.
Right. It truly is a team effort, and also, and team effort doesn't mean you're all working on it. It's all like you're not like pointing fingers and stuff. It's more along the lines of, hey, there's a problem. What's the solution? And let's work on it together. Because there's too many times when that stuff happens and then it just falls apart.
Yeah, I agreed.
Yeah, so kind of with that in mind, and I really appreciate, it seems like we kind of dug a lot into, teamwork and kind of what that represents. I want to just touch a little bit more on kind of the inspiration side. I know Ikenfell's Kickstarter page cites inspirations like Paper Mario, Earthbound, Mega Man Battle Network, games that I would consider to be personal favorites. So I was just wondering, like, what would you say were kind of some of the key takeaways of these games and their success? And kind of along that same line, what would you attribute to kind of the positive critical reception that Ikenfell's received? I know you tweeted recently that a lot of the feedback you've been seeing is that people who are playing it are loving it. So a long-winded question, but hopefully you got that.
Yeah. I think there's just a lot of ideas that... So there's genres like first-person shooter and strategy games and platformers that someone makes one and then everyone else keeps making it. Like Celeste is just Mario. Maddie has been making Mario for 20 years. Every game Maddie makes is like, what if Mario was like this? And you just get to kind of build on those game mechanics over and over and over again, and that you keep discovering new things. Like no one was like, Celeste is a Mario ripoff. Everyone was like, Celeste is awesome. It's incredible. Yeah. I've played a million platformers where you jump and have to avoid spikes. A million of them. And why is this one so good? Like, what did you do? How did you figure that out? And so if you look at a lot of old games or modern games, just look at a lot of games, look at a lot of mobile games, you just find systems that someone is trying and couldn't quite get there because they're the first one. They just did it first. And so I love looking at old games a lot because there's a lot of stuff where people are trying things. Like Robotech, they really tried something, and that was it. That's Robotech died there. Nobody's making Robotech 455, and it's a Steam success. Like no one's doing that. And so I was like, so I like to dig into a lot of old games and see the kinds of things they were doing and the way they incorporate systems in their games. And I think a lot systems in a big way as metaphors. So when you get in a battle, that their characters aren't actually doing that. Characters aren't jumping from like exact increments of grid squares. They're not doing that stuff, but it means something. Like a battle represents something in the story to the characters, to you as the player. It also represents a moment of pacing. Like this means something, and you're gonna feel a certain way after that, and that plays a big role. And different kinds of systems can really do that in a big way. Like they can make you feel like tired or exhausted or really excited or victorious feeling or just sad that you had to finish it. Like I'm just sad I had to defeat Sif. Like that made me feel such a way. It wasn't just a whack at a dog with a sword. It was a big moment, and it mattered a lot, and it felt bad, and it was supposed to feel bad. Like the music made it feel bad, all that sort of thing. So there's so much room to build on a lot of things rather than always trying to innovate. You can innovate on top of someone else's innovation that they never really got to follow through on. And I think a lot of people notice that. And like integrating that with story-based stuff, just people love stories so much. They love lots of characters. They love when there's like stories with a whole bunch of characters, and that's just received really well, especially if you just take a lot of time and care into it. Don't just put them in there, but put them in there and spend a lot of time on them, because everyone can tell and feel, and the work shows through, especially if you have like collaborators. Like we brought in a lot of writing collaborators. Also, like the queer stuff was a big part. Like the queer community received the game really, really well. There's a lot of stuff in Ikenfelll that old games didn't have, and also a lot of modern games don't have. Old games don't have all these accessibility options. Old games don't have this stuff. Most modern games don't just have like normalized queer stuff in it. Most games don't have naturalistic dialogue. They don't feel like they talk like people you know. Like someone doesn't say, "Man, that made me feel super crappy that you said that." No one says that in any video games. Nobody even says that in TV shows. People just kind of like, they're like, and then they go on a revenge killing spree. Like, no one does that. But that's fun TV still. But naturalistic stuff is very, very powerful. And you see it a lot in fan fiction, which is another really big inspiration for Ikenfelll. And I think everyone should look into fan fiction and fan art a lot more, because this stuff just exists in huge amounts there. It's like, what if Transformers, but they like lived the domestic life, and then they talk to each other like really domestically, and it's very interesting. And they explore ideas from a new angle, where they quite often like experiment with like really, really personable and like powerful ideas, but then it's just like shoved off into a corner of the internet that everybody pretends is. Well, it's very horny, but it's not only horny. Well, like there's a lot to it. There's a lot going on there, and a lot worth looking into. And also, it's like so many people do it, and so many people read it. There's a lot there. There's something that people want. A lot of people want, and if you're ignoring it, you're ignoring it at your own peril. And a lot of that exists in like queerness and representation, in accessibility, in building on things that never got realized, in the last thing being naturalistic, like being able to really identify with what's there. And in order to be able to identify with people, you have to put a lot of yourself in there, because all the things you feel are very real, and quite often a lot of other people feel them. So you have to pour your heart out. And also you have to look at how other people are pouring their heart out. When people draw fan art, what do they draw fan art of? They draw fan art of enemies hugging each other. They draw fan art of two characters, one who died in the story. Actually, no, they didn't die, but they actually live together now. Or they actually joined teams, and then they defeated, like, they draw a lot of stuff, and there's a reason they're doing that. There's a reason they decided to write that, and there's a reason 5,000 people read that fan art, or that fanfic. There's a reason 400 million people retweeted that piece of art. There's something valuable there. You have to really pay attention to what that is. And I think it gets written off and ignored a lot for a lot of reasons, because queer people do it, because women do it, like it's thought of as a lot more frivolous, and it's not. It's extremely powerful and valuable, and I think it needs to be paid a lot more attention to, both because it's needed, it's wanted, and also like it's marketable stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have to chime in here, and I really like. I'm sorry if this is a little bit off topic, but I definitely want to like kind of piggyback onto what you're saying here, because I've seen a lot of discourse about this on Twitter lately, especially. And I myself, I'm a writer. I did my MFA and everything, and that was a very like literary focused program. And there is this obsession with I think with literary types. Sorry. Who just seem to dismiss a lot of like anything genre and then a lot of fan work too. And I think for a show that like ours that focuses so much on marketing and understanding audiences, like if you create a work that is widely received very positively and people immediately are thinking, what would I have liked to get out of that? And there is just so much consensus around that. That means that there is a dimension of story that is simply, or character or design, kind of like you were saying, that is simply like not being serviced for a massive audience of people. So like you can consider that again from the human perspective, which is of course the approach I would take, which is more representation in games just generally means more people get to see themselves and experience their lives through fictional characters, which is like a universally positive thing. And from a business perspective, it means there are demographics out there that are simply not spending money on the products that you're making, and you're ignoring them because you're deeming fan work to be, I guess, secondary to like traditional writing or what have you. And it's also an excellent way for anybody up and coming to experiment with some story beats without necessarily having to, do the like necessarily like from the ground up characterization work, which is such an exceptional exercise to get into. And it helps with, like you said, like the naturalistic nature of things and character voice. And I could go on about this for another hour, but I won't.
But like simply put, just
go ahead.
Real quick, simply put, it's just a matter of identifying how to be more genuine with your product, with your game. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Chevy, that's like everything. People, there is a huge demand, and it is, and like Mustapha said, it is very underrepresented, because I think what a lot of what we're so used to, let's just call it as a very big culture, like a grouped culture together here, is what we see in media and films and all this history of things, and then people like react in that certain way, but just like you said, Mustapha, too, in the scenes that you have been part of, like people pass it off, but again, it's just about being genuine and being empathetic of that audience and everything. I mean, we talk about empathy like every episode practically, but it's important, that genuine aspect, and it's great to hear that you identified that, and also to call out to other people, just be mindful of that, because one representation of a particular group does that not mean it should be the representation.
Right, exactly.
And just get slightly salty. I promise this will be it for salt. There's two sides of this one where it's like, well, we did it and it didn't sell, so let's not do it again. That's just garbage. That's not how stuff works. Like Celeste was the 5,000th indie game jumping on spikes, not the first one. Doom wasn't the first person shooter. Like stuff doesn't sell the first time. Stuff sells when you treat it like it should sell, and when you market it properly, and when you care about the audience. You can't just put something in, it doesn't sell, and it doesn't work. Like that's not how anything works. Audiences will quite often think that's how it works. I think business people are a little bit more savvy than that, but not always. Mm-hmm. And shareholders definitely aren't tolerant enough of that. And my other salty thing is just throw the word pandering in a dumpster. It's a stupid word. It's not good. It doesn't mean anything. It just means you made something that I don't like, or it's not for me, or it is for you. You just don't like that it's not only for you. Like it's just a garbage word that doesn't mean anything. You're pandering. What? Why don't you say that about the 500 first-person shooters that came out? Why don't you say that about all the platformers? Why don't you say that every time there's a white person in a game? Why do you only say that when there's a person of color in a game? Yeah. Like you're really just like showing your whole ass when you use it. I think it's just stupid. Anyway, that's it. That's the ending of that rant for me. I just there's a lot of backlash against this stuff, and I think it's just shallow and unfounded. Anyway, back to talking about fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,